On behalf of New Zealand, I want to apologise to Grace's family. Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't, and I'm sorry for that.
When a nation's leader publicly apologizes for one person's death, it signals more than tragedy. It signals a moment of collective failure and reckoning. Grace Emmy Rose Millane was born on December 2nd, 1996, in Essex, England. She was the youngest of 3 siblings, with 2 older brothers, Michael and Declan. Those who knew her described Grace as sociable, family-oriented, creative, and adventurous. She stayed in constant contact with her family, sending photos and messages almost daily. In 2018, Grace graduated from the University of Lincoln with a degree in advertising and marketing. She was 21 years old, standing at the beginning of everything. Before starting her career, Grace planned something she'd been dreaming about for years, a year-long backpacking trip around the world. She saved money, researched destinations, and prepared carefully. This wasn't impulsive. It was methodical. Her mother, Gillian, had traveled through South America as a young woman. She understood what Grace was seeking. On October 26, 2018, Grace left England and traveled to Peru. For 6 weeks, she moved through South America, visiting Peru and Chile. She met other travelers along the way and continued sending updates home constantly. In her family's words, she was a kind, fun-loving, adventurous daughter, enjoying the first of what would have been a lifetime of adventures before her life was cruelly and brutally cut short. November the 20th, 2018. Grace arrived in New Zealand. She spent 10 days travelling the North Island before reaching Auckland on November 30th. She checked into the base backpackers hostel on Queen Street, sharing a room with other travellers. Auckland in the summer is filled with thousands of young backpackers. Grace was one of many. And like many solo travellers, she used dating apps to meet people and make social connections. December 1st, 2018, the day before Grace's 22nd birthday. She'd matched with someone on Tinder. After messaging back and forth, they made plans to meet for drinks. Grace sent a message to her friend Amina back home. "I click with him so well." That afternoon, Grace sent her last photo to her family, a Christmas tree at Sky City. Around 5:50 that evening, Grace left the hostel wearing a black dress. She was heading into the city centre to meet her date. Grace Millane walked out of her hostel on a warm Saturday evening. She would never return. And for 8 agonizing days, no one would know why. December 2nd, 2018. Grace Millane's 22nd birthday. Back in England, Her parents David and Gillian sent birthday messages. They waited for a response. Grace always responded quickly. She'd been sending photos and updates constantly throughout her trip, sometimes several times a day. Hours passed, no reply. They sent more messages. Still nothing. By the end of the day, David and Gillian knew something was wrong. Grace's brother Declan felt it too. This wasn't like her. In his words, she'd been bombarding them with details of her trip. A silence like this was unthinkable. They contacted the base backpackers hostel. The staff confirmed what they feared. Grace hadn't returned to her room on the night of December 1st. Her belongings were still there, untouched. For 3 more days, the Mullane family tried to reach their daughter. They contacted friends. They checked social media. They called hospitals. Nothing. On December 5th, they reported Grace missing to Auckland police. The initial police assessment was cautious. There was no evidence of foul play. Grace's belongings were still at the hostel. Young travellers sometimes stayed with new friends and forgot to check in. It happened all the time. But the Mullane family knew better. This wasn't Grace. This wasn't how she travelled. This wasn't who she was. Declan was immediate in his alarm. "This is wrong," he told police. "This isn't Grace." An investigation began. Auckland police started where they always start in cases like this. Security footage. Auckland's city centre is covered in CCTV cameras. Every street corner, every business, every hotel lobby. If Grace had gone somewhere that night, there would be evidence of it. Detectives began pulling footage from December 1st, tracing Grace's movements hour by hour. At 9 o'clock that evening, cameras caught her on Victoria Street. She was with a man. They were walking together. 15 minutes later, they appeared on camera at Sky City, the entertainment complex where Grace had sent her last photo. They went inside. Over the next few hours, more footage emerged. The couple bar-hopping through central Auckland, multiple locations, multiple cameras. In every frame, they looked comfortable, relaxed. Grace was smiling. The man was attentive. They appeared to be having a perfectly normal first date. Then, at 9:41 p.m., something critical appeared on the footage. Grace and the man entered the City Life Hotel on Queen Street. They walked through the lobby together. They stepped into an elevator. The doors closed. Detectives kept watching. They pulled footage from the hotel's cameras for the rest of that night and into the next day. Grace Mullane was never seen leaving the building. The man was. But Grace wasn't. Police needed to know who this man was. Fast. Digital forensics teams started working through Grace's social media and online activity. They found something almost immediately, a Facebook comment on Grace's profile picture. She'd updated it recently, just before her date. The comment was brief, beautiful, very radiant. The profile belonged to the same man seen on the CCTV footage. Police cross-referenced the Facebook account with Tinder data. The match was confirmed. His name was Jesse Shane Kempson, 26 years old, and he was currently living at the City Life Hotel, the same building where Grace was last seen alive. Room 308. As detectives dug deeper into Kempson's background, a pattern began to emerge. He was living on state welfare benefits, but he told people he was an oil executive. He'd told previous landlords he was a professional athlete. He'd told employers he was a manager at major retail chains. None of it was true. Jesse Kempson was a compulsive liar. He lied about his job, his income, his connections. He created elaborate false identities and maintained them until someone checked his story. Then he'd move on. New apartment, new job, new set of lies. To landlords, to partners, to anyone who got close, Jesse Kempson presented a version of himself that didn't exist. And now he was the last person seen with Grace Mullane. On December 6th, police contacted Jesse Kempson and asked him to come in for routine questioning. He agreed immediately. When he arrived at the station, he was wearing a three-piece suit. He was polite, cooperative, and seemingly eager to help. He acted like someone who had nothing to hide. Detectives asked him to walk them through the night of December 1st. Kempson's story was straightforward. He'd met Grace at Sky City around 6 p.m. They'd had drinks. The date went well. They talked. They laughed. Everything was normal. Around 10 o'clock, they said goodbye. A hug. Maybe a kiss on the cheek. Grace went one direction. He went another. That was the last time he saw her. The next day, he tried to message her on Tinder, but she'd unmatched him. He assumed she wasn't interested. He moved on. That was all he knew. Detectives listened carefully. They took notes. They asked follow-up questions. Kempson answered everything confidently. He maintained steady eye contact. He never hesitated. But here's what he didn't know. While Jesse Kempson sat in that interview room explaining how he and Grace had parted ways as friends,
was talking to Grace on Tinder.
Yeah.
We'd matched on Friday. I saw that we'd matched the next day on Saturday. And then we met at Sky City, and then we decided that we were going up to Andy's Burger Bar, which is on the first floor.
Whose idea was it to go to that particular burger place?
Me, because I didn't initially know that she was real.
What do you mean?
Well, there's a lot of... So have you heard of catfish?
No.
So catfishing is where someone uses your profile or uses your photos and pretends to be you and then meets, and you're a completely different person.
How does meeting in a public place sort of protect you from meeting someone who's not as good looking as...
Well, there's security there. So if she wasn't who she said she was,
Yeah.
at least in my mind I'd feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's us.
Down there?
Yep. So she's going that way, and I'm going across the street. I go down Queen Street. No, I go down Victoria Street, straight down to the bottom, and then hang a left, and I head towards the viaduct.
You've kind of walked in a bit of a funny direction if you were planning to go to the viaduct. Is there a particular reason you were going to do that?
I feel safer down that way.
And we're very, very concerned for her safety, obviously.
detectives in another part of the building were analysing 6 days of CCTV footage from dozens of cameras across Auckland. And what they were discovering contradicted every single word he'd just said. The CCTV footage told a very different story. Grace and Jesse didn't part ways at 10 p.m. They walked into the City Life Hotel together. They took the elevator to the 3rd floor, his floor. They went to his room. Grace never left that building, but Jesse did. And what he did over the next 24 hours painted a chilling picture. The timeline started just hours after Grace was last seen alive. At 1:30 in the morning on December 2nd, Grace's birthday, Jesse Kempson's phone showed a series of internet searches. Waitakere Ranges, a large forested area west of Auckland. Hottest fire. Then, in the same time window, his browser history showed he'd been viewing pornography. At 6 a.m, more searches. Rigor mortis, extra-large bags, carpet cleaner. That afternoon, the searches continued. Flesh-eating birds. Are there vultures in New Zealand? These weren't the searches of someone in shock or panic. These were the searches of someone planning, someone calculating, someone trying to solve a problem. And then CCTV cameras picked him up again. Between 8 and 10:42 that morning, Jesse left his apartment and went shopping. Footage showed him purchasing a large suitcase, Then he went to another store and bought cleaning supplies. By mid-morning, he'd rented a car, a red Toyota Corolla. That afternoon, while Grace Mullane's body was still in his hotel room, Jesse Kempson went on another Tinder date. The woman he met later told police about their conversation. Jesse talked about burying bodies. He mentioned having friends who were police officers. He made comments that unsettled her so deeply that when he offered her a ride, she refused. She made her own way home and never contacted him again. Her instinct likely saved her life. That evening, Jesse rented a carpet cleaning machine from a local supermarket. He told staff he needed to clean up red wine stains in his hotel room. Then, at 9:26 p.m., almost exactly 24 hours after Grace was last seen alive, security cameras captured something critical. Jesse Kempson wheeling a suitcase on a hotel trolley through the lobby of the City Life Hotel. He loaded it into the trunk of his rental car. The suitcase was large, and it was heavy. December 7th, 2018. Grace's father, David Mullane, flew to Auckland. He'd been communicating with police remotely, but now he needed to be there. His daughter had been missing for 6 days. That afternoon, Auckland police held a press conference. David Mullane stood before cameras and made an emotional appeal for information. Grace is a lovely, outgoing, fun-loving, family-oriented daughter, he said. Grace has never been out of contact for this amount of time. His voice was steady, but the strain was visible. We're all extremely upset, and it's very difficult at this time to fully describe the range of emotions we're going through. Detective Inspector Scott Beard stood beside him. His concern for the family was evident. The story was already making international news. Search teams mobilized. Volunteers came forward. The nation was watching.
Thank you for coming today. As you know, Grace has been missing for several days. We last had contact with her on Saturday the 1st of December. And as a family, we've been extremely concerned for her welfare. Grace is a lovely, outgoing, fun-loving, family-orientated daughter. Grace has never been out of contact for this amount of time. She's usually in daily contact with either her mother, myself, her two brothers, members of the family on social media. She arrived here on the 20th of November and has been bombarding us with numerous photographs and messages of her adventures. We're all extremely upset, and it's very difficult at this time to fully describe the range of emotions we are going through.
Police made an announcement. They'd spoken with a man who was the last person seen with Grace. He was now a person of interest in her disappearance. For legal reasons, they couldn't name him publicly. But behind closed doors, investigators knew exactly who he was, and they knew his story wasn't holding up. December 8th, Jesse Kempson was taken into custody. Police formally declared the investigation a homicide inquiry. In the interview room, detectives confronted him with what they'd found: the CCTV footage, the timeline, the searches, the lies. And this time, Jesse Kempson's story changed completely. He admitted Grace had died in his room, but he claimed it was an accident. His new version: they'd been having sex. Grace asked him to choke her. It was consensual, he said. Rough sex that went wrong. Afterward, he said he fell asleep in the shower. When he woke up, he found Grace dead on the floor. He panicked. He didn't know what to do. So he hid her body. Detectives listened. Then they presented the evidence that contradicted his claim of panic. The internet searches, methodical, calculated. Searching for information about decomposition, disposal sites, cleaning materials. These weren't the actions of someone in shock. The photographs he'd taken of Grace's body. 7 images on his phone. That wasn't panic. That was something else entirely. The Tinder date he'd gone on the next day, while Grace's body was still in his room, talking casually about burying bodies. That wasn't the behavior of someone overwhelmed by an accident. The systematic cover-up spanning more than 24 hours. Buying the suitcase, the cleaning supplies, renting the car, researching burial sites. Every action deliberate. Finally, Jesse agreed to show police where he'd buried Grace. December 9th, Waitakere Ranges, a forested area west of Auckland, off Scenic Drive. At 4:17 in the afternoon, police located a body approximately 10 metres from the road. It was buried in a shallow grave. Grace's body had been compressed into the suitcase Jesse had purchased the morning after she died. Formal identification confirmed what everyone already feared. Grace Millane. Detective Inspector Scott Beard held a press conference that evening. His voice was controlled, but the emotion was unmistakable. "I can now advise that a short time ago we located a body which we believe to be Grace," he said. "The focus now is to piece together exactly what happened to a young girl who came to New Zealand on her OE. For the Millane family, the worst had been confirmed. For the investigation, the search had ended, but the reckoning was just beginning." Across New Zealand, vigils were held in Grace's memory. People gathered in city centres and parks, lighting candles, leaving flowers. From December 10th to 13th, Auckland's Sky Tower and Harbour Bridge were illuminated with white ribbons. A nation mourned a young woman who should have been safe. December 10th, 2018. New Zealand's Prime Minister, Jacinda Ardern, addressed the nation. She was visibly emotional, her voice close to breaking. "I cannot imagine the grief of her family and what they will be experiencing and feeling right now," she said. "And my thoughts and prayers are with her father David, who is in the country, her mother Gillian, who cannot be here, and her wider family, friends, and loved ones." Then she said something that would define how New Zealand understood this tragedy. "On behalf of New Zealand, I want to apologise to Grace's family. Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't, and I'm sorry
and to
for
wider
that."
family, friends, and loved ones. And so, on behalf of New Zealand, I want to apologise to Grace's family. Your daughter should have been safe here, and she wasn't, and I'm sorry for that. I've advised the family.
This was the apology that opened this story, and now its full weight is understood. December 8th, the same day Jesse led police to Grace's body, he was formally charged with murder. On December the 10th, he made his first court appearance. Name suppression was granted to ensure a fair trial. The media could report the details of the case, but they couldn't publish his identity. For 2 years, New Zealand would know him only as the accused or the man, but what courts would eventually reveal was that Grace Millane was not his only victim. January 2019. Brentwood Cathedral in Essex, England. Hundreds of people gathered to say goodbye to Grace Millane. Family, friends, classmates from university. People who'd known her throughout her life. Detective Inspector Scott Beard flew from New Zealand to attend. He'd worked closely with the Millane family throughout the investigation. His presence was more than professional courtesy. It was a symbol of connection between two nations bound by this tragedy. The family's private grief was now unavoidably public. The world knew Grace's name. They knew how she died. But here, in this cathedral, the focus was on who she had been in life. The forensic examination was conducted by Dr. Simon Stables, a pathologist with years of experience. His findings were presented in court months later, but they're essential to understanding what happened in room 308. Cause of death: manual strangulation. Dr. Stables explained that pressure applied to the neck causes unconsciousness within about 10 seconds, but to cause death, that pressure must be maintained for 4 to 5 minutes. He found significant bruising on the left side of Grace's neck. more bruising on her collarbone and shoulders. "It wouldn't have been gentle," he testified. "This has to be something a bit more forceful." He continued, "To maintain pressure on the neck sufficient to do that for 4 to 5 minutes takes quite a bit of effort. This wasn't a momentary loss of control. This was sustained, deliberate force." November 4th, 2019. Nearly a year after Grace's death, the trial began at Auckland High Court. A jury was selected, 7 women and 5 men. Jesse Kempson pleaded not guilty to murder. The prosecution was led by Crown Solicitor Brian Dickey. His case was built on evidence, not speculation. He presented 6 days of CCTV footage showing Jesse's movements after Grace died. The jury watched him buy the suitcase, the cleaning supplies, hire the car. They saw him wheel the suitcase through the hotel lobby. The internet search history was shown in detail. The searches for Waitakere ranges, for rigor mortis, for flesh-eating birds. Each search time-stamped, each one showing calculation. 7 photographs were found on Jesse's phone, intimate images of Grace's body taken after she was dead. Despite Jesse's cleaning efforts, forensic teams found blood evidence throughout his hotel room. Luminol testing revealed what had been there. 3 other women testified. They'd all met Jesse through Tinder at different times. Each described the same pattern. He liked choking during sex. He was aggressive. He pushed boundaries. The prosecution's central argument was clear. This wasn't an accident. 4 to 5 minutes of sustained pressure on someone's neck isn't a mistake. It's murder. Dickey described Jesse's actions afterward as creating a labyrinth of storytelling and lies. The defense, led by Ian Brookie, presented a different narrative. They called it sexual misadventure, consensual rough sex that went tragically wrong. They argued that Grace had an interest in BDSM, pointing to aspects of her private sexual history. They suggested she'd asked to be choked, that Jesse had complied, that something went wrong, and when he realized she was dead, he panicked. A defense pathologist testified that Grace's injuries were consistent with consensual sexual activity. He suggested that alcohol consumption might have contributed to her death. The strategy sparked national outrage. Grace's sexual history was being examined in open court. Her choices, her privacy, her life were being dissected to defend the man who killed her. For the Mullane family, watching from England via video link, it was soul-destroying. The trial lasted 3 weeks. On November 22nd, the jury retired to deliberate. 5 hours later, they returned. The verdict was unanimous, guilty of murder. The courtroom was silent as victim impact statements were read. Gillian Mullane's words were delivered via audio-visual link from England. "I torment myself over what you did to my Grace," she said. "The terror and pain she must have experienced at your hands. As a mother, I would have done anything, change places with her. I'm full of guilt knowing I couldn't help her, but I should have been there. She died, terrified and alone in a room with you." David Mullane spoke next. "Grace was taken away from us in the most brutal fashion. Our lives and family have been ripped apart. This will be with us for the rest of our lives." February 21st, 2020. Jesse Kempson returned to court for sentencing. Justice Simon Moore delivered the sentence: life imprisonment, minimum non-parole period of 17 years. Justice Moore addressed Jesse directly. "You are a large and powerful man." She was diminutive. "In those circumstances, Miss Mullane was particularly vulnerable. You were in a position of total physical dominance." He continued, "You didn't ring an ambulance or call the police. Instead, you embarked on a well-planned, sustained, and coordinated course of action to conceal any evidence." The judge's finding was clear. Jesse Kempson had acted with a high level of callousness. The Mullane family had waited over a year for this moment. for justice, for accountability. They had it now, but it couldn't bring Grace back. But the Mullane family's wait for the full truth wasn't over yet. During Jesse Kempson's trial, his identity had been suppressed. News coverage showed him in court, but his face was blurred. His name couldn't be published in New Zealand. 2 women saw that blurred footage on television, and both of them recognized him immediately. They contacted police. They had their own stories to tell. Stories of violence, control, and fear. Stories that predated Grace's murder. Jesse Kempson's pattern of violence was about to be fully exposed. In October 2020, Jesse faced a second trial. This one was before a judge alone, no jury. The victim was a former partner who cannot be named for legal reasons. 8 charges were laid against him. 2 counts of sexual violation by unlawful sexual connection. 3 counts of assault. 2 counts of assault with a weapon. 1 count of threatening to kill. Her testimony described months of escalating abuse, physical violence, sexual violence, emotional manipulation, financial control. He held knives to her throat. He strangled her repeatedly. He stole $10,000 from her. In her police interview, she described how Jesse would change in an instant. It was like Jekyll and Hyde, she said. Pure evil in his eyes. She continued, "It was like a game to him. He loved seeing me cry, upset, scared. He loved it because it was power and control." The verdict: guilty on all 8 charges. The sentence: 7.5 years, to run concurrently with his life sentence for Grace's murder. 3 weeks later, Jesse faced a third trial, again before a judge alone. This victim was a British tourist on a working holiday visa. Like Grace, she'd come to New Zealand seeking adventure. Like Grace, she'd met Jesse on Tinder. 8 months before Grace died, this woman went to an Auckland motel with Jesse. She testified that he raped her, that when she tried to resist, he threatened her. "If you don't do this, I will kill you and your family, and you know I will." She felt trapped, unable to escape, terrified. When Justice Geoffrey Venning delivered the guilty verdict, Jesse erupted.
You're so full of You have no reason to convict me. You're full of
The sentence: 3.5 years, concurrent with his existing sentences. In total, Jesse Kempson received 11 additional years for crimes against these 2 women, all of it running concurrently with his life sentence for murder. But more importantly, the full picture was now clear. This wasn't one tragic incident. This was a pattern. Years of violence against women. Years of escalating abuse. December 22nd, 2020, 2 years after Grace's death, the Supreme Court of New Zealand denied Jesse's final appeal for name suppression. His identity could finally be made public. Jesse Shane Kempson, 28 years old, convicted murderer, 9 total charges across 3 separate trials. A documented pattern of violence against women spanning years. The man who'd called himself an oil executive, a professional athlete, a retail manager, all lies, was now publicly identified for exactly what he was, November 2020. 1 month before Jesse's name was revealed, the Mullane family suffered another devastating loss. David Mullane died of cancer. He'd been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma after spending 3 weeks in New Zealand attending Jesse's trial in December 2019. The cancer spread to his brain. It was terminal. Detective Inspector Scott Beard released a statement. The Mullane family had their lives turned upside down when David's much-loved and cherished daughter Grace was murdered while visiting New Zealand. David died knowing his daughter's killer was in prison. But he never saw justice for the other victims. He never learned the full extent of Jesse's pattern of violence. Gillian Mullane had also been undergoing cancer treatment during the trial. She survived. David was survived by his wife Gillian and their 2 sons, Declan and Michael. In the face of unimaginable loss, Gillian Mullane made a choice. She would turn her grief into action. Together with Grace's cousin, Hannah O'Callaghan, Gillian founded the Love Grace campaign. The concept was simple. Collect handbags, new or gently used, and fill them with essential toiletries. Then donate them to women fleeing domestic violence, women in refugees, women who'd often left home with nothing. The items inside each bag are basic but crucial. Shampoo, conditioner, deodorant, shower gel, toothpaste, toothbrush, a purse. Small things that restore a sense of dignity and independence. Each bag carries a tag that reads, "Love Grace," taken from the last card Grace wrote to her mother. The logo on the tag was drawn by Grace herself. The campaign started in October 2019 with a target of 50 bags. As of 2025, Love Grace has distributed over 23,000 handbags worldwide. They operate in the UK, New Zealand, the United States, Canada, Singapore, and Kenya. The campaign also raises funds for the White Ribbon campaign, which works to educate men and boys about violence against women and to raise awareness at a grassroots level. In January 2024, both Gillian Mullane and Hannah O'Callaghan were appointed Officers of the Order of the British Empire, OBE, for their services to charitable fundraising and tackling violence against women. Gillian also received the Prime Minister's Point of Light Award from Boris Johnson for her work. In 2024, Gillian climbed Mount Kilimanjaro in Grace's memory, continuing to fundraise and advocate. Grace's case had ripple effects beyond New Zealand. In the UK, the Domestic Abuse Act of 2021 introduced restrictions on the so-called rough sex defence. Grace's case contributed momentum to that legislative change, making it harder for defendants to use consent as a shield for violent crimes. Similar legal discussions took place in New Zealand. Dating app companies implemented new safety initiatives industry-wide. In September 2024, a documentary titled The Lie was released on Netflix. Directed by Helena Cohen, it examines the rough sex defence and the victim blaming that occurred during Grace's trial. Gillian Mullane approved the project. Gillian Mullane continues her advocacy work with White Ribbon and Love Grace. In a recent podcast interview, she spoke about Jesse Kempson for one of the few times publicly. "I don't think about him," she said. "I don't care what happens to him. He came into our life and destroyed our family." Detective Inspector Scott Beard, who worked the case from the beginning, reflected on the lasting impact. "The family will forever have a life sentence," he said. The case affected his entire force. Grace represented every traveller's family's trust in the places their children go. Grace Mullane should have turned 29 this year. She should have built the career she studied for. She should have travelled the world she dreamed of exploring. She should have been safe. Instead, her name is remembered not for her dreams, but for how they ended.